Let's talk about how hard the content game really is. I'm going to share with you today how I get newsletter subscribers and the effort that goes into just one subscriber. I'm going to share with you some insights on how you can increase for your client the results that they get from content marketing, from lead generation, and that periodic newsletter, because I'm a big advocate of that prospect newsletter. And then ultimately, just really what to expect when you're doing this the right way. I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips. So I talk about direct response. I have somebody write in and say, look, well, I'm spending $1,000 and I got 5 leads and I'm frustrated and I don't know what's going on. And, I just don't know why I can't grow the business. And I asked them, I said, well, what do you expect to happen? You spent $1,000, you got 5 leads. That's not enough information because essentially what's necessary to get one lead, in some markets it could be highly saturated and the people are just overwhelmed and there's a lot of free information and the prospect doesn't believe they need specific information because they could just Google search, and 5 leads is really good for $1,000. It's about $200 cost per lead. Then again, in other industries, if you put out quality information and you put out a good reason to reach out to you, maybe you offered a free gift or something, and you've spent $1,000 and you only got 5 leads, I'm concerned. Now that still doesn't mean anything because it's your cost per sale, it's your profit per sale, your customer lifetime value that really tells me for sure what's going on. Because if you spent $1,000 and you got 5 leads for a $50,000 transaction, then you're actually doing really good because your customer lifetime value is pretty high, and all you need is one of those leads to convert, and you've recovered the money. Now, when I say a $50,000 transaction, you really should be thinking about net. If you're getting $50,000 net from a sale, you can spend quite a bit of money to get a lead. Now, to get a newsletter subscriber from me, it can cost between $97 and $297. That is a lead who is just on the free newsletter. Now, should it cost that much? Well, I certainly don't think it should. I think I should be getting leads every day. I think there should be thousands of newsletter subscribers. Of course, there have been thousands of newsletter subscribers before, but I didn't hold up my end of the bargain, and I lost a lot of them because the conversion was very high, and my ticket value is very high. So, I like working for clients, and I'm working for clients rather than sending newsletters, and so I had to develop this particular system that I'm describing today. Now, I've used this system for quite a long time, and to be honest, I am not consistent about using this system, but when I do, I get measurable results. So it has 4 parts. First off, you have to understand your audience. Who is your audience? Now, the big mistake that I've made over the years, and I've seen a lot of other people make, is they switch between audiences all the time. They're jumping back and forth between audiences. If you're not consistent about the audience, you're not going to be consistent about the results that you get because you need to understand key things about that audience. Now, it's helpful if you know their job titles or you know where their experience is, and you document that. You build out a customer avatar. But you also need to know, what do they want? How do they define success? What do they fear? What kinds of insights will they pay to receive? See, even if you're giving out a free newsletter, you still have to know what they're willing to pay for, because every so often you got to sweeten the pot by giving them something they would have paid for to set up something that they should pay for. So, for example, if your audience would pay for financial advice and you have a quality newsletter that gives financial advice, sometimes, because they're not going to pay for it all the time if they're getting it for free. But ultimately, that gift could introduce the fact that you're going to have a full seminar on the topic, and here's a little idea what you're going to get in the seminar, and then if you join the seminar, you're going to get all these more ideas, and that's how you get that commitment to change media. So let's say they're getting an email newsletter, they're getting a print newsletter, and now you're going to change media to get them in a room so you can sell them a product or service. Again, you have to know what they're willing to pay for. because they won't show up in the room if they get it for free. And ultimately, you need to have the incentive set up or the example set up to get them to take action. You also need to know what's common between people in that marketplace and what's not common. Because if you're talking about what's common, more people in that particular niche or market will relate to what you're saying, and you're more likely to bring them forward. Now, finally, you have to know, what do they believe keeps them from success? That is just what you need to know about an audience. Okay, now you're going to develop that into a customer avatar. You're going to develop that into data objects. What do I mean by a data object? Well, the niche titles, so the job titles. So operation, in my case, operational risk manager, data analyst, project manager, marketing director. I know what titles fit into the categories of my products and services. In the case of the Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips newsletter, my subscribers identify as freelance copywriters or freelance marketers. They don't understand the concept of business development until they're more advanced and they've got more revenue and they've built some kind of agency. So the transition from freelance copywriter or freelance marketer who's struggling to find the next client, who's frustrated about the lower and lower prices that are out there, who are shocked and fearful of artificial intelligence because it can write good enough copy, especially for somebody who doesn't know what good copy looks like. But ultimately, that's my specific audience. Now, if I'm talking about risk management professionals who, by the way, benefit from learning how to write words that sell, because they have to convince people to follow laws, rules, and regulations and to rewrite processes and do things that are very complex. That's that subject matter group that I'm talking about who can benefit from becoming a copywriter because they can bring that expertise to sell high-ticket products. I can't be mixing the two up. I got to stay specific because part number 2 is there has to be a problem to solve. So the problem to solve must be transformational. You have to, in this case of copywriting, what I'm sharing here today helps you transform yourself from a lowly old freelance copywriter who's barely making it by to somebody who's helping clients develop newsletter series, not just writing one article in a newsletter. And you're going to see soon how much content is necessary in order to run a newsletter that generates sales. But ultimately, transformational. You were making $1 a word before. Now you don't even bother to count words because you have 6-figure contracts. There has to be emotion tied to the problem. So what's the emotion of being a freelance copywriter? Well, you're constantly chasing a check. You're not necessarily trading hours for dollars, but you're chasing a check. And it's so easy to replace you, and there's thousands of other copywriters that are out there. And if you don't get your act together and solve this problem, you're going to struggle and be frustrated all your life, and it's going to be horrible. Now, you have to know what they tried and failed. Now, I'm not going to keep putting pressure on you because you're already a subscriber. You're already listening to the podcast. I don't need to convince you the value of the podcast. I need to give you value so you can get results. So you have to know what the client tried and has failed. So let's say your clients are roofing contractors and they've been going around chasing insurance companies, and they've realized that the insurance companies are not paying out anymore for roof replacements, and now they got to go out and find some roofs to replace. So the intelligence that you bring them is going to help them overcome failure. So they put ads in the newspaper, and they were tired about how much money they were spending in the newspaper, and they want a better way, and you introduce to them target demographics. Okay, now the target demographics for a roofer would be homes of a certain age. It would be, and you probably want the first roof. You'd want a house that is getting up to be 20 years old, not a house that's 100 years old, because it could have had a roof replaced recently. You're the houses that are getting up in age, the communities that are getting up in age, the homeowner that's not likely to go and just get a cheap roof. See, you have to say, well, what have you tried, and how did it fail, and here's what we could do to solve it. Now, if you tell them all that, they're going to try to do the crappy thing they did before because they're going to believe that what they did before was broken, and now that they got this new information, they can give it another try. You can't have that. Again, it's got to be transformational. You're going to step in there and you're going to help them. You're going to take them by the hand. You're going to solve this problem for them, and then you're going to leave them more equipped, and you're going to eliminate the false beliefs, and you're going to show them how they're self-sabotaging and how your way is better. Do you see what I'm saying here? There's a problem to solve. Number 3, a benefit to the solution. Because we all got problems, but there's a lot of problems I've got that don't need to be solved because they're not really that big of a problem. So you have to understand that in order for someone to purchase a high-ticket solution, they've got to benefit from that solution, but the benefit needs to be multiples of what they're going to invest. So if they're going to invest $10,000 and the benefit is $100,000, you're selling money at a discount. It's very easy to say yes to $10,000 if they're confident they're going to get $100,000. Now, you can't tell them they're going to get $100,000 because if they spend 10 and get nothing, then you're now liable. So you have to have success stories, case studies. You have to show how you've helped other people in the same audience. You have to have how their family will respond to their success. So when I was working with electrical contractors, the big thing about owning an electrical contracting agency is that you got all these people out there, and so there's a lot of administrative overhead. You got to get out there every morning and make sure the vehicles get out on time. The guys are getting in vans, and they got to get out on time. You got to have a constant stream of people getting recruited. Not that many people want to be electrical contractors, even though it pays 6 figures and better. And so their family's saying, "Why don't you just get a job?" And you're like, "I got a job. I got 3 jobs. I got 4 jobs." And they're like, no, just get a job. Go work for that other contractor you used to work for. Which is saying to the electrical contractor who owns a business who's doing okay that they failed. And so what do we need to help them with that the family's going to say, "Oh my gosh, I was wrong and you're doing such a great job"? Well, it means the electrical contractor needs to be home for dinner every night. So they're not out scheduling late jobs. They got a project manager for that. They've got a coordinator. They've got a around the clock scheduling so that their cell phone isn't ringing when a client has an electrical problem. Do you see? That's not just transformational, but it builds the family, the emotions, the connection. Okay, number 5. Now, this is where a lot of people fall short. We talked about the audience. We talked about a problem to solve. We talked about the benefits of the solution. And a lot of folks are jumping around to different audiences. They're jumping around for different benefits, and then they're just making it harder for themselves. The basics for a newsletter today is 52 headlines. Okay, so those are the prompts, the writing prompts for your weekly articles or your weekly promotions. Could be 500 headlines, but you got to get started with 52. You're going to have 12 articles that are on big ideas. So you're going to write for the client these 12 articles that are about the big transformations that their customers are experiencing following a specific system, and they're written for a specific audience. That's your monthly prospect newsletter. Hopefully you're sending out by mail. You need 12 viral YouTube videos. And I'm just saying YouTube because there's a lot of platforms out there, but these are like short form commercials or advertorials that they could be putting in their local media. They could be putting on YouTube, but you need 12 of them, and they need to correspond with the newsletter so that you can have a funnel set up here. And finally, you need about 6 key big idea, and usually these are I call them courses in my case, but these are the content hubs at the website. There could be a product line. They could be a specific benefit. But again, we've got to telegraph to the search engines. We got to telegraph to people in the specific audience that there's value here. So this is the minimum content. Now, those 52 headlines, for each of the headlines that you're using as a writing prompt, you've got to go and come up with more headlines. Because again, the headlines could feed your pay-per-click campaigns. The headlines could be on social media posts. The headlines could be a lot of places. So you may have 52 headlines for each of the 12 articles. See, this is content development. This is why freelance copywriters who are just writing a list of headlines or just writing an article or just writing the script for one YouTube video are struggling, because there isn't a way in hell that client is going to get any results off of one thing. Now, it doesn't mean you should create a lot of stuff and just see what works. there's got to be analytics behind this. And that's something that we do here, and I've done a number of videos, is that the analytics measures, which are very boring and sometimes difficult, have to be there in order to know which of the 12 articles is generating sales, which of the 12 videos are performing in what channel. So my podcast goes out on the Spreaker network, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. There's like 17 different podcast networks that the podcast is on. Each of them have their own analytics. And then it's syndicated to YouTube, Rumble, BitChute. All these platforms working together are sending people to my website. Now, how do I know who's going to the website? Again, this is the transformational expertise that you can deliver to clients. And that's the getting their analytics straight, getting their source attribution straight. And now you may not want to get onto the technical side of direct response or database marketing. You might just want to keep writing copy. But you got to know that you're testing headlines, you're testing lead paragraphs, you're testing calls to action. There's got to be a certain amount of traffic to do that. You got to run enough pay-per-click campaigns in order to know what works and what doesn't. You could have a really good idea looking at their controls, but if their controls aren't properly measured, if they haven't put the due diligence in to build the content that's necessary and to really derive a funnel that's moving people from interested to lead to being a buyer, then you're not going to have the insight for them. So you want to write all your content based on the response. That's how you know what works and what doesn't. Now, yes, you can make big money writing fluff pieces for publications or people who believe that the more content is better. You could make money writing SEO articles for people who believe that just making the search engine happy is what's necessary. But none of that is going to be long term, because artificial intelligence can write a pretty decent search engine article. People in India and the Philippines can write pretty decent content. If there's no strategy, though, where does the content fit in the result? So my advocacy to you as a copywriter or as a marketer is to start helping clients be more intelligent about the implementations of words that sell, to help them understand that if every piece of content solicits a response, we can now measure, and now we can know what content is valuable and which is not, and we can start tailoring our message to the audience. We can have multiple audiences that we're serving in different content realms, and we can ultimately start driving in the publishing side, because today almost every business, whether it's the marketing plan or a specific editorial calendar, they are publishers. And they have to get the right content out there because, again, the buyer is in a pool. I almost said cesspool, but they're in a pool of what they believe to be good and accurate free information. So why would they want to hire a roofer to do a roofing inspection when they can watch 4 YouTube videos and walk out in their front yard and look at their roof and think they got something? Why would somebody with a vehicle take it to the dealership versus taking it to just any old auto mechanic because they could read a review of the local auto mechanic and see that it was as good as a dealership? But the people making reviews, are they qualified to make that judgment? Especially if somebody's got a higher-end vehicle and they're taking it to Billy Bob's BMW repair, and now they're invalidating warranties. They're not understanding the recall elements. Not that BMW has a lot of recalls, but ultimately there are factors that could hurt that customer in the future. Do they understand that? Other high-ticket services like electrical contracting services, like expert services, attorneys, doctors, lawyers, cosmetic surgeons. Folks believe today that they can just go to the internet, and they're going to believe tomorrow they can just go to artificial intelligence and ask a question and get legitimate results. Now, of course, the internet draws from content that's on your clients' websites. AI draws from content on your clients' websites. But it's more valuable if you can go to that specific audience, tell them about the problem that they want to have solved and how transformational it will be and how it'll make a big difference in their life and how they can get started. Identify the benefits of that solution, and then have additional follow-up content. So the last thing I want to leave you with is the value of a prospect newsletter. A prospect newsletter is sent to both clients and to people who are interested in the product or service. It is entertaining primarily, and it is positioning primarily, and it has very little education. But everything it has as far as education is concerned is really about why they need to pick up the phone and make a call. It's great for customer retention. It's great for finding new customers. But the prospect newsletter is not just once and done. You will have to. I've had prospects on my newsletter for years, and it was profitable to send to them because you measure by the whole campaign, not by the individual. But ultimately, they all of a sudden activate and buy a $10,000 product. So, again, though, as we're describing here, it's going to be 52 writing prompts. That's a year's worth of content. It's going to be 12 key big idea articles at a minimum, because a prospect newsletter tends to go out every month. It's going to be some kind of key talking point in a video format, in an audio format, in a long form feature article format. I say 12 of those because you're not everybody's going to read the prospect newsletter, so you have to have other ways of touching them. And then, of course, the 6 key hubs. And the reason there's 6 is that so you can do one every other month, and they can ultimately be consistent about growing content around these hubs, because that's how somebody who's intensely interested in a topic because they got a problem to solve, that's how you keep them on one site so they take action on that site rather than like honeybees jumping from website to website and not getting in touch with your client. So I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips. We've walked through how I get newsletter subscribers. And again, this is just public-facing content. This is not content that would be behind the scenes in a customer service perspective, in a product delivery perspective, or even technical documents that might help the customer use the product or service better, which are all good opportunities for you as a writer. This is just the front end. And if you help customers with this front end, you're going to help them level up when it comes to their overall marketing plan. But you got to help them understand it's just not write an article here and there. It's a plan, and it's a regular, consistent program. And I know from my own experience that when I drop the ball and I don't get a newsletter out on time, or I don't get something taken care of because I'm busy doing billable work, but I'm losing a big chunk that could be future billable work because I've neglected them. And I don't want you to neglect prospects. Don't want you to neglect clients. And so understanding what's really involved to serve your audience will help you connect and be of value to your clients. You can ask your questions at www.adbriefings.co.uk. Go to the contact page and ask your question. Questions are the foundation of this content. And I hope being transparent has helped you understand that this is not easy, but when you're getting paid to do it for a client, it'll get done. So don't feel guilty or ashamed that you're not doing this. Just help the client understand, though, that it's so important that they must be doing this. And because it's measurable, we can show you the results, and you'll know whether or not this is working for you. Again, thanks for listening. This is the Ad Briefings Copywriting Tips podcast, available at www.adbriefings.co.uk and wherever you listen to podcasts. I'll see you in the next episode.